But strangely, the key to understanding the elephant is hidden inside its body, its guts. And that's where our dissection begins. We fully appreciate that you may be a tad apprehensive about what we're going to show you tonight, but as scientists, we are desperate to show you the kinds of things that you just don't normally see on traditional natural history programs. Before dissection can begin, we must release the gases that have built up inside. Elephants' guts produce 2,000 litres of methane a day. That's enough to fill a weather balloon. Our audience are veterinary students. They're behind glass not to protect them from the smell, but to prevent the spread of potentially dangerous pathogens. It's also why we're all wearing protective suits. Joy, from your point of view, obviously as a comparative anatomist, what's your main area of interest in the elephant?
My main area is to see how they've adapted to their environment.
I have to say it's hard to hear you at the moment on the basis of trying to... It just shows you, though, how much gas builds up within 24 hours.
This is an herbivore, and herbivores generate a lot of gas anyway because their gut is basically a big fermenting chamber. But now we have the additional gas of the postmortem decomposition. So that's added to the volume that you're seeing in front of us here.
And on a comparative basis, I mean, obviously it is a mammal like us, but we're expecting to see some pretty extreme biological engineering in here.
Absolutely.
22 years ago, I trained here as a vet. I was one of the students behind the glass just like them. But in my entire career working with animals, I've never witnessed anything quite like this. The sharpest knife at the college belongs to Richard Pryor. He works on most major dissections. To gain access to the elephant's guts, Richard must first remove its legs. While he's doing that, let me tell you a little bit more about Joy Reidenberg. She loves gross anatomy and specialises in large animals. She's probably been inside more whales than anyone else on the planet. And what never ceases to enthrall her is comparing anatomy across the animal kingdom.
What's happened now is they've lifted the hind leg off and they've also lifted the front leg off so that we can get access into the abdominal and the thoracic cavities in the animal. So this is the area where the shoulder blade was, and all of that's been pulled backwards, so now we have access to underneath here is where all the ribs are, and under here we should be able to see the heart and the lungs. On the other side, the hind leg has been lifted off, and so now what they're doing is taking the skin off so that we can have access to the abdominal area where the intestines are.
I'm absolutely gobsmacked how heavy this skin is. It is amazing.
It's amazing.
In fact,
it's like tough
you can almost not hold on to it. I mean, it's difficult.
It is heavy.
To carry
the
weight.
Heavy. I think most people see an elephant as such a large animal, they assume it's a fat animal, but it's really not a fat animal.
And it looks fat because it's got a very big abdomen full of a fantastic...
Very spherical, but it's really
its
not.
digestive system gives it that appearance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which we're going to look at.
Which is the next part of the procedure. Richard, hold yours.
Okay, you can see the ribs nicely there, can't we?
And you can begin to see now that the body wall is actually made up of a number of muscle layers. And you can see 3 of them here, 3 separate muscle layers. The muscles running in different directions to give that extra support, so the muscles won't tear in any one direction. You've got that cross support. Here we are.
So you're now into peritoneum now.
Yep.
You get an immediate sense now, having opened the abdominal wall, just how vast the digestive system is.
Can you stand back, please?
Look at it as it's coming out now. It's that, all of that you need to be able to fuel this massive
really
animal.
huge. Wow.
That is colossal.
That is incredibly big. I don't think I expected it to be that
I
diameter.
did not expect it to be that big.
Again, you can see the tension here with lots of gas being produced and some liquid content as well, so we just need to relieve all that pressure.
You did that deliberately.
So we're looking at here is the omentum, which is a fine tissue that holds all the blood vessels that are wrapping around the gut in this area.
It has another function as well, which is if there's any damage to the wall of the intestine and there's a lesion or a hole penetrating through, this can clamp down over that hole and stop anything leaking out and spreading around the rest of the body cavity.
Absolutely. It's such a beautiful tissue. It's nature's Band-Aid.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
With the guts released, the team can now start untangling the intestines.
Still warm.
Let's take this one up this way. This one.
It is important that we can try and separate this out so we can look at the different parts of this digestive system to see how the elephant manages from its plant food to get what it needs to be able to fuel this massive body. And isn't it incredible to be able to fit all this lot on the floor inside that body cavity? It is absolutely extraordinary.
Take your pick, Richard. But we've got to try and orientate now.
This should be the rectum.
Yeah, that's
That's the rectum.
That's the rectum.
While the team gallantly try to sort out the orientation of the digestive system, let's take a look at this giant eating machine in action. Earlier this year, I went out to South Africa to find out what elephants eat that actually requires such massive guts. Park Ranger Percy Ramagama has taken me as close to the elephants as is safely possible.
That's a whole bush gone over. It's amazing being this close. You can hear the start of digestion, the getting the food and ingesting it into the digestive system, and you can hear how destructive that is. The crashing and crunching of branches as they move through to take the food that they want.
It turns out elephants will eat practically anything. No tree or bush is safe. Bark, wood, roots, even the soil they grow in, all are on the menu. But it's so poorly nutritious they need to eat a lot. In 20 days, they'll eat their entire body weight in plants, hence the need for big guts to process it all.
Let's go back there. The wind is stable now. It's gonna just go around.
Okay. We need to move on because the wind's dropped and it's now going round in circles, so that puts us in a fairly vulnerable position.
Finally, we've managed to get the digestive system laid out. So let me take you on a little journey that this elephant's food would go on when it's eating and when it was alive. Now, this elephant would have been fed a mixture of hay, but also things like fruits and so on. And obviously, that would go in this end and be macerated and chewed up by its incredible teeth, which we'll look at later. It would then end up in here, in a sac, which is the stomach, very similar to our stomach, that's connected directly to all this pipe work here that is the small intestine. This is where the kind of easy stuff to digest is digested, to get lots of energy out of its food that's quick and easy to harness. Then, though, the small intestine goes round here, down this pipe here, and joins this massive bag here, which is called the cecum. We have a cecum, we have a little appendix next to it, which is relatively small because we don't digest this kind of food. But this is the really important part of the elephant's digestive system, where fermentation goes on to extract goodness out of this incredibly rough plant material. That goes on in the cecum, which is then connected to this massive piece of pipework, which is the large intestine, where some more fermentation goes on and the absorption of the goodness that the elephants managed to get out of here. And then finally, when it gets down to the rectum, out it produces a fecal pellet. Now look at this. They're not massively different in terms of you can tease this apart and it's very familiar as what started in the front end. It's not a brilliantly efficient digester, but it stays alive and it's able to fuel this huge, massive animal thanks to this part of its digestive system.